So welcome, Martin. This is your time in the spotlight. So I'm
Thank you.
curious to know, tell us what you do here at Elantis.
What do I do here at Elantis? Well, I'm one of the solution architects here, specifically geared towards records and information management, which is a specific type of way of managing our information that's in the cloud and on-premise. So even though that's my focus, I can do other things as well. So just from helping with migrations, doing some software development, business analysis, you name it, jack of all trades, right?
Wonderful. So tell me about your career path, because you are coming up on a 1-year anniversary here with Elantis, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, exciting. So I'm curious to know what led up to your arrival here at Elantis. What's your career path look like?
It's a good question. I'll try to keep it brief. But mainly, I started as a software developer. I went to school for computer science and did that work for a little bit. I moved into a little bit of consulting in the early years of my career. I worked abroad in Kenya, in Nairobi specifically, and part of my work there was to digitize an outpatient clinic. So for those of you, that's an old term now, but digitization means to convert from paper to digital. So they were completely paper-based. The clinic worked on cash and in paper only. And I was part of a consulting agency that helped them to put together a computer system. And I had to learn about how the health industry worked and how people managed their information. And that was kind of my first exposure to information management. The work I did was a lot of development. I had to solve a lot of technical problems, especially with infrastructure in a developing country, which was very difficult to keep up to date and synchronized. They had more than one clinic. They had 3 clinics across the country. So that was very interesting work. But when I came back, I went back into consulting, did more web development, and moved into public sector for a few years. And there I learned about SharePoint and how that needs to be implemented. And a lot of the discussions around SharePoint on-premise is just how to manage that information. How do we keep things together? How do we not bloat the system? And how do we find things? So this is kind of things start to build itself up in my career. Just moving forward, I just kept working with that. The cloud was introduced. There was the same type of problems with new limitations, especially with storage. So managing information and life cycling it, which is another word of just knowing when to delete things, became a more important discussion about how that all worked. And then one day, Elantis called me up and they said, we're doing a lot of migrations into the cloud. We have a lot of business process automation to work, and it was a very easy fit for me to come in here with my skill sets to kind of complete the circle of everything. So yeah.
To bring it all together into this one place. And beyond too, right? With records and information management. So taking it to the next level and expanding. So what sparked your interest in technology? Is this something that you've always had an interest in as a child, or was it perhaps in your college years that you started to lean toward technology? When did this interest start for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did think about this for a while. I was always interested in computers. Even as a child, I was 6 years old, and I was trying to put together computers. I burnt motherboards and video cards. I learned the hard way of making sure you unplug something before you pull it out of the computer. But I've always had an interest in it, and I feel like I'm very lucky to know what my direction was at an early life. I'm not sure if I had any influence in this, but my entire family is also in computers. But I'm not sure if they influenced me or if we just kind of grew up together. My sisters are also in technology. My brother-in-laws are in technology in different parts. But I just remember that I was always interested in it by myself as a person, and I wasn't really asking them about like, oh, what are you working on? How are your what kind of work do you do on a computer? I was just there always like in the weeds trying to reformat operating systems and just kind of seeing how things work, figuring out how the internet worked. I was one of the generations that started with the internet, so I don't want to date myself, but
you grew up with it.
Yeah, I did grow up with it. I am one of the first ones, but I wasn't born with the internet around. So yeah, I mean, it was always there, and it was I had a very different perspective on it. So I mean, I liked the development part, and I liked building something, but I really liked the human part of it. Like how do people work with it? Because at the end of the day, I've been told lots of times computers are a tool. So what are we using the tool for, and how effectively are we using it? So I always think of them as, you know, a tool in a toolbox. You know, how good can you use that hammer? You know, is that saw really, really sharp? And that was my interest in it. So I always had that human element to it that I was very interested in.
Well,
I think I answered a bunch of questions there. But
you did, yes. Thanks for sharing about that, because yeah, it sounds like it's just a part of you, and you know, from back when you were a child all to now and beyond, right? How it just, as technology evolves, you evolve with it, and you do have a unique approach to it. That human element, you're right. I think in the future it's going to be even more important of what's that balance between that human interaction and technology, and where does one end and one begin, kind of thing.
It was very interesting that a couple of years ago I came to the realization. I went to Microsoft Ignite, I think it was like 3 years ago, and I see what, you know, Microsoft has been doing with their services, their cloud technologies, and they became so complicated that like all these systems and how they work together, that even the board of specialists that were there to answer every question, they didn't know the answer to it, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you can get this one guy who knows everything, right? And, you know, he or she is the person who designed it, the ultimate mastermind in all this. But there's no one like that anymore. And that complexity is there. And it needs to still be translated to everyday individual. People cannot exponentially learn the way that systems become so complicated. So that important part of that human element, like we talked about, that understanding becomes even more important, how these things work, and trusting that the other person on the team, even though you may not know what they're doing, understands that component, and make sure that when you send that information to that process or that system, that it does work and it does send you stuff back. And that building that trust with everyone becomes very, very important.
Yeah, good point. So you mentioned attending Microsoft Ignite. Obviously, that's one way to develop your professional skills, networking, that type of thing. How do you stay fresh and current in your professional development? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's great. I try to vary my my exposure to it, but I find a very easy way to do that is to do collaboration with other people. I attend those conferences, talk to many people, There's some local events that happen once in a while, even though COVID has kind of stopped that from happening in person, but there are still digital events that I attend. A lot of the time is that I just don't know the answer to the questions that people ask me, just even at work. So doing my own research and participating with everybody else doing the work. I find that I learn a lot faster when I don't individually by myself work to Google something, but I work with someone else to do it together, because they always ask questions that I don't think about. So it is a varied way of working at things, and sometimes it's even just not a direct question and I need to provide an answer, but it's having discussions about business and how things work and how things are changing that kind of gets me thinking about other ways of providing solutions to problems. So just having a different perspective, even from a different industry, that really helps.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it amazing how, that old adage of two heads are better than one, how that collaboration really can be that fuel for your own learning and your development. And
it is.
It's great that you have that awareness that that's a key part of how you learn and how you grow and how you expand your knowledge. So you've mentioned, you shared with us in Nairobi, the work that you did there. I imagine that was a really rewarding experience. What would you say is a moment in your career, could be at Elantis or prior to this, that you are most proud of?
That's most proud. That's so many moments.
What's just one of them? It could be one of the most proud.
I think one of the ones in most recent memory, and I'm not sure if it happened here or at or my previous work, but it was last couple of years. I think one of my most proudest moments is that I came to terms with myself that I don't need to know everything, and it just kind of, it was a lot of weight off my shoulders that I didn't have to come up with solutions to everything, and it's okay to say I don't know, and I'll come back to you. And it was very liberating to know that, and knowing that it has nothing to do with my character. It had the opposite of effect to what I thought it's going to be, that people asked me even more questions. It seems like to kind of maybe humanize me a little bit, to make it look like that, that it could be that I don't need to know everything, really. So yeah. I think that was one of my own internal proudest moments. Yeah.
And it's one that I imagine you carry through in your work even now, right? Is not putting that pressure on yourself to know it all, and that you're recognizing this is a journey. You're growing and you're learning as you go. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm curious what's next for you. Perhaps you could share a little bit more about records information management and what that looks like at Elantis. I know that's a big project you're working on right now, is developing that practice. So perhaps tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about, and it can be difficult to describe, but a lot of people get hung up on that word record. That it's very official and very formal, and it has to be very meticulously put together. But the bigger word is actually the information management. The record part is a small component of it, and it just means that it has to be managed in a specific type of way. But what's next is information management, and I think that is a really big component in our future of technology, since we're creating so much information now, and it has been exponentially growing for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years. terms of how much data people create, how much data there is to create, and it causes a lot of confusion. We can see that in every parts of our lives. So it's all about creating the proper type of information to be able to analyze and understand what you're looking at. And part of that is making sure that you're not looking at data that is not important anymore, or information that's not important anymore. So it's all about that cleanup. That's really what it's about, and making sure that things get funneled into the right places at the right time for people to look at. One of the biggest paradigm shifts that we see when organizations go into the cloud is that people are used to going to information to see what they need to do. You go to a file folder to open up a file, to work on your file. You go to your email to look at your email. But one of the really big benefits of going into the cloud is that you have all this processing power behind it, and that information comes to you now. Instead of you going to that information, it comes to you, so you don't have to spend a lot of time, a lot of mental energy finding where the things are at. You don't even have to even look. It just comes to you. So making sure that the right things come to you at the right time becomes fundamental, and this is part of information management, is just to know you need to tell the systems what is important to you for your job or at the right time to see it. And that's where I think that's where the future is to making sure that, yes, we have all our data. Let's not delete anything that is important, but let's just put another layer for our human minds to understand, to know when to see that information, because we are not computers. We can't analyze everything all at the same time. And this is the part of building out this practice, is to know what information is important, what we need to protect, and when do we need it. So it's growing. It's very much in its infancy right now, but I feel like that this is kind of the direction that everything's kind of going.
So it sounds like you have some really exciting work ahead of you. What else gets you excited to come to work in the morning?
Yeah. There's a lot of things. Well, other than the projects that we work on, which are absolutely fantastic. They're very large problems to solve, and a lot of similar problems happen with every single organization. And I have the privilege to see all of those in a different level. So usually most people will just see, we have this specific problem. You may have never seen this before, but this is the problem that we have. And in fact, it's the same exact problem by your neighbor. And I really like threading all those solutions together, and looking at everything at a level that we can start creating nice directions towards. So instead of solving specific problems for specific departments or automating things for a specific purpose, by looking at everything at the organizational level. And this is what I really like that I have the ability to do here, that I haven't been able to do before. I get really excited about that kind of work. The people here are fantastic, very, very bright individuals, and really do want to learn about these new technologies and how they kind of coincide together. The culture is fantastic, and that is one of the primary reasons why I come to work. It's not all about work. We do have our fun times that we do, and we have our breaks that we can take with each other. So yeah, it's very holistic.
Wonderful. Yeah, the full picture, right? So my last question for you, Martin, is where you see your career going in the next 5 years?
That's a great question. I think I want to sit here for the next 5 years and see how all of these questions can be answered. There's a lot of things that we haven't figured out how to do yet, and part of that surfacing of that information, most of that those concepts are still in its infancy, but they are maturing quickly. And I anticipate I'm still going to be doing the same thing. I know that's kind of a boring answer, but it's kind of hard when you already have the best job, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and really, you did mention too that it's in its infancy now, and there's just so much more that will evolve in that practice, and you'll be busy. You'll be busy.
Yeah,
I anticipate.
Absolutely. We can make some projections in the next year to see where things are going to go. But I do see that it's starting to really snowball. It was really tiny the last couple of years, but now we're going from the theoretical to the application part of it. And now it's like, let's see how we can apply some of these concepts. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Martin. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you, and thank you for being one of the best parts of Elantis.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.